past 2 years, one prominent problem China faces is insufficient consumption. For instance, the period leading up to the Chinese New Year is typically the annual peak season for shopping, but this year's spending appears exceptionally low. Previously, bustling shopping centers now appear deserted, with many storefronts empty. January 27, it is Saturday. There's still half a month until Chinese New Year. In previous years, supermarkets were crowded with people buying New Year goods. Now people seem to have disappeared, probably shopping online. The current situation of the economy is really not optimistic. The mall also shows a bleak scene. People were expecting to experience the bustling atmosphere of Hangzhou during the Chinese New Year, but unexpectedly found the entire square unusually deserted. Today, on the second day of Chinese New Year, I came to Hangzhou for tourism. Look at the Wanda Plaza in Gongshu District, Hangzhou. There is no one. During the New Year, the streets of Foshan, Guangdong are also eerily empty. At 10 or 11 in the morning, the stores are not open. Clothing stores, department stores. No one is on the streets. It seems that people from other places are not celebrating the New Year in Foshan. In the supermarket, only 2 elderly people are shopping. The malls are empty and quiet. Even the pedestrian streets hardly have any people. It is too cold outside, so I came into this mall to warm up a little bit, and also to shop a little. But I did not expect inside such a big, luxurious mall. There are not many people. During the New Year, the streets of Shenzhen are similarly deserted. Additionally, some people pointed out that traditional New Year markets are also lacking the usual crowds and lively atmosphere, with businesses not doing well as in previous years.
What's going on this year? Last year, around the 20th day of the 12th lunar month, gifts were selling like hotcakes. This year, look, there's nobody, no one on the streets, not even in the supermarkets. Are people not celebrating the New Year this year?
This person directly asks if people have money to buy New Year goods.
Friends, my family sells New Year goods. I want to ask you, do you have money to buy New Year goods? If not, I don't need to make deliveries, so I can avoid excess inventory. If people are buying, I'll go get more goods.
The responses from people confirm the fact that everyone is short of money. Some people said, this year, just remove my share first. Come and ask me next year. I barely have any money left. Where can I find money to buy New Year goods? Several others also asked if there are goods available for installment payments. Others bluntly stated, just being alive is already good enough. This lady with a worried expression posted a video saying that the Chinese New Year is approaching, yet she doesn't have money to buy New Year goods or fireworks for her children, making her feel sleepless and distressed. Another person composed a satirical poem based on reality. This Chinese New Year is too difficult this year, just because there's no money in the pocket. New Year goods are still not purchased. Every day it's just plain noodles. Occasionally strolling in the streets, suddenly noticing the bleak businesses. No rice in the pot. If the people lose their income, the economy loses its support. All industries and walks of life are affected. People lament that after earning a bit of money throughout the year and deducting expenses for food, drink, and utilities, there's basically nothing left. With no money, what can people buy? The current low consumption is indeed evident. Before the Chinese New Year, the farmers' markets are deserted. Vegetable vendors mentioned that last year, water spinach was selling for 7 to 8 yuan per pound, but this year it's only 3 yuan. Yet there are still no buyers. Even though vegetables are so cheap, it's strange that no one is buying them.
Unfortunately,
Xiamen's Zhengcuoan has converted from a popular tourist village to a desolate urban village. This winter, the prices in Zhengcuoan are ridiculously low. You'll see fresh squeezed fruit juice for 15 yuan for 2 cups, rice noodle rolls for 10 yuan, sha cha noodles for over 10 yuan, various snacks with absurdly low prices, local specialities for 10 yuan, electric scooter rentals for 10 yuan, and even sea experience activities for tens of yuan. What's even more absurd is that many homestays have reduced their prices to below 100 yuan.
Even though prices are cheap, there are very few tourists. Chinese people point out that although the pandemic has ended over a year ago, the foot traffic here has not only failed to recover, but declined even further. Reports indicate that although pork prices are very low before the Chinese New Year this year, sales are far from previous levels. Usually the Chinese New Year is a peak season for pork consumption, but this year sales continue to decline. Analysis suggests that China's deflation problem is becoming more severe, drawing significant attention. Deflation means that there is less money circulating in the market, and prices will follow suit by dropping. It also means that people can buy more with the same amount of money. However, it leads to people being unwilling to spend money because they hope for further price reductions. This in turn leads to a decrease in consumption and investment. Since consumption is a key driver of economic growth, a decrease in consumption will directly affect the pace of economic growth and may even lead to economic recession. Data released by the National Bureau of Statistics of China on February 8th show that in January 2024, China's consumption price index decreased by 0.8% year-on-year, expanding by 0.5% from the previous month, marking the fourth consecutive month of deflation. This also marks the largest year-on-year decline since 2009, mainly due to the decline in food prices, with pork prices falling by 17.3%. The National Bureau of Statistics also shows that the Producer Price Index, which measures factory shipment costs, also decreased by 2.5%, indicating a continued weak economy. The data shows that China entered deflation in July last year, except for a brief rebound in August. It has been declining ever since. Reports indicate that companies are further reducing factory prices to find buyers for their products. PPI declined every month last year. Economists have made it clear that over the past 2 years, people's greatest concern has not been inflation in China, but deflation. China's CPI has long hovered below 1, and the prices of many goods have been decreasing. Data suggests that China's deflation situation is more severe than many economists expected, which increases the risk of China falling into a longer period of price declines. And the longer the downward trend in prices lasts, the harder it is to reverse. The economic community believes that if inflation is likened to a severe cold, deflation is cancer. China's economy has entered a deflationary state, which is much more damaging than inflation. With inflation at 3%, it is considered normal, but now it's less than 1% and still declining. Deflation brings many serious consequences, such as a decrease in corporate profits, leading companies to reduce investment and hiring, resulting in an increase in unemployment and a slowdown in economic activity. At the same time, while things were supposed to become more expensive, they are now being discounted. Now that everything is discounted, who will restock? If businesses stop restocking, the economy will definitely deflate. With deflation comes immediate layoffs. With layoffs, people have no income. Without income, there's no consumption. With no consumption, products will pile up, leading to deflation. So it's all a vicious cycle. During inflationary periods, debtors are also usually winners because they can repay their debts with cheaper currency. Creditors suffer losses because the value of their loans decreases due to currency depreciation. It's important to note that inflation can stimulate consumption because people tend to buy goods and services before prices rise. However, inflation can also increase investment uncertainty because companies find it difficult to determine future costs and revenues. The situation is the opposite during deflation. Debtors face greater burdens. Although the loan amount remains the same, the increasing value of currency increases the value of currency required to repay debts, adding to the pressure of borrowers and possibly increasing the risk of personal and corporate bankruptcy, further affecting the development of the economy. Analysts also point out the signs of deflation. First, prices haven't risen despite printing a lot of money to circulate. Even with trillions of yuan, it did not have any effects. Second, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. With 700 million people in debt, China has entered an era of national debt. Due to the debt crisis, there are many real-life tragic incidents. This lady tearfully recounted the story of her friend. Her friend was the owner of a construction company, but due to a failed project resulting in enormous debts, he ultimately chose to end his own life. It's worth noting that during deflation, people tend to save money, but the total wealth remains constant. Young people who want to start businesses find that there's no money circulating, and without available funds, they feel helpless and can only lie flat. a term referring to people who have no ambitions to contribute positively to society and life in general. This kind of society is called a low desire society because it lacks the foundation for ambition. Without the means to strive, employment becomes difficult and there are no favorable conditions or business models for entrepreneurship. According to data from the People's Bank of China, in the full year of 2022, RMB deposits increased by 26.3 trillion yuan, an increase of 6.6 trillion yuan compared to the previous year, with resident deposits increasing by 17.8 trillion yuan. On July 11, 2023, the central bank released financial statistics for the first half of 2023, showing that by the end of June, RMB deposits totaled 278.6 trillion yuan, an 11% increase year-on-year, indicating that people's propensity to save is far higher than their inclination to consume. Industry experts point out that deflation is one of the most concerning economic phenomenon for market economies because it is very difficult to handle. Currently, China is facing a very serious problem. China's consumption demand is already quite low, mainly because the proportion of household income to GDP is too low, and there are many poor people, leading to an overall insufficient demand. During the implementation of China's dynamic clearing or zero-COVID policy, direct demand and commercial activities in China were severely impacted, leading to a significant decline in business. This resulted in a large number of layoffs, with many migrant workers forced to return to their hometowns. At the same time, the slowing down of business activities also led to a decrease in overall consumption demand. The Chinese government GDP data is usually inaccurate. If we look at China's logistics data from last year, we can see that China's logistics decreased by more than 10%. When national logistics dropped by more than 10%, we know that this directly corresponds to the actual decline in GDP rather than the official announced positive growth of 3%. This indicates an overall decline in consumption as well as decline in all business activities and investments. This situation will inevitably bring very serious adverse consequences. From the end of 2022, it was evident that prices began to decline, directly related to the negative growth of GDP in the previous year. In fact, the entire economy showed negative growth, leading to a decrease in prices, indicating a reduction in total demand. The price decline has added to the challenges the Chinese economy faces this year. Over the past 6 months, car prices and housing prices have been falling. The prolonged real estate crisis is suppressing consumer spending. China Evergrande Group, a typical example of the real estate crisis, has been ordered to liquidate by the Hong Kong court. The downturn in the Chinese economy and the impending collapse of the real estate market have begun to affect the lives of the high-income class. These people have struggled for many years and accumulated a certain amount of wealth, but now lack of money and unemployment have become critical problems in their lives. A well-known Chinese influencer shared the true anecdote of a friend. His friend used to work in the real estate industry, but recently opened a spa. He asked his friend why life has become increasingly difficult lately, and why many bosses of the same age are experiencing declining incomes. He also heard that many people are discussing the phenomenon of middle-age impoverishment. In response, his friend explained that many people who switched from the real estate industry to the internet industry have fallen from the high-income class to the middle class, fully illustrating the rapid pace of social change in China. He explained that people who were accustomed to high consumption and high-income lifestyles in cities like Beijing and Shenzhen suddenly faced the disappearance of the internet industry dividend, while also having to cope with the pressure of high mortgages. Originally, they ascended multiple social classes and hoped to settle in these cities, but now they are facing setbacks. He emphasized that these dividends are historically short-lived and no one can rely on them forever. Faced with the current economic predicament, many economic experts call on the public to actively consume and stimulate economic growth, but many people find themselves strapped for cash and dare not spend freely. In fact, to spend, there are two basic prerequisites. One is that people need to feel secure about the future. Even if they spend all their money, they still have confidence in the future, believing that they can earn more money and have enough savings to overcome potential problems. Only then will they dare to spend generously. On the other hand, in order to spend, you need to have money. However, in the past 2 years, the economy has not been optimistic. Many people are facing salary cuts or layoffs. In this situation, one can only feast one's eyes. There's simply no spare cash on hand. In recent years, downgrading consumption has become a common term. Whether it's the declining sales figure on Singles' Day or high-end luxury brands gradually losing their appeal to young people, it all indicates that the purchasing power of most people has contracted. Economists also point out that China's deflation problem is becoming severe, which is a clear sign of worsening economic conditions and presents unique challenges to other countries and regions. Many economists believe that China's deflation may have the greatest impact on emerging markets, especially those with significant trade relations with China. The latest price data from China and other weak economic signals suggest that the Chinese economy is entering a period of significant risk. If China's deflation means that China is no longer the engine of global economic growth, but depends on demand from other countries and regions to revive its economy, then China's deflation will also impact the world economy. In fact, since China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, low-cost, made-in-China goods have repeatedly shaken the global trade market. Despite quality concerns, many companies in other countries still struggle to compete with low-priced Chinese goods, leading to stagnation in many industries. Now that prices of Chinese exported goods are continuously falling, exacerbating complaints from Western manufacturers about unfair competition. Analysts from Capital Economics stated that on Thursday, China's exports still face obstacles this year because Chinese goods are vulnerable to greater trade protectionism, with China's recent gains in global market share starting to face growing pushback overseas. BYD, China's biggest car maker, recently announced that the prices of electric cars sold in Germany will be reduced by 5 to 15% after Mercedes-Benz warned at the end of last year that the brutal price war in electric vehicles is affecting its profits. It is worth noting that China's exports have also fallen sharply in recent months, which is evident from both Chinese data and data released by the World Trade Organization. We know that exports, investment, and consumption have always been the three mainstays of China's economic growth. Among them, exports are very special. Initially, exports accounted for over 30% of China's GDP, but as China's economy continued to grow, its reliance on exports gradually decreased. So far, it accounts for about 20% of China's GDP. Currently, changes are occurring in foreign trade exports, with the most significant changes happening in the European and American markets. Reuters reported that in 2023, Germany's exports to China decreased by about 9%, with a particular noticeable decline in automobiles and chemicals. At the same time, imports from China also decreased by about 1/5, falling to less than 156 billion euros. Current international trade trends indicate that by 2025, the United States is expected to surpass China and become Germany's largest trading partner. China has repeatedly lost its position as the largest trading partner in the European and American markets. In addition to complex geopolitical factors, challenges such as deflation in the manufacturing industry and declining international market demand have made the survival environment for small and medium-sized exporters exceptionally difficult. Experts believe that the next few weeks will be crucial for China's decision makers. In March, China will hold the annual National People's Congress in Beijing. The government will announce this year's economic growth target at the meeting. Experts expect that when setting this year's economic growth target, Beijing's language may be more vague, such as not saying growth of 5% as in the past, but rather around 5%.